get any Black Friday sales? Any cool Cyber Monday deals, Dalan? I myself got me Wolfenstein 2. $25. You know, gotta pay for taxes. That kind of nonsense. Gotta pay for taxes. Gotta pay for shipping.
You sound a little upset about that. No, I bought myself Tekken 7 because I'm ready for Noctis to drop.
Okay. So we partook
Noctis
the holidays.
Noctis.
Well, welcome back to Salient Points, episode 7. This is your Tuesday episode for the week. Episode 7, right? Your host Carlos Macias, along with
Dalan Kirkwood.
Yeah, how you doing, Dalan?
I'm a little distraught about Black Friday, but let's not go over that
we'll
right
get
now.
Into it. Well, distraught, man. You bought a $25 game, right? That's how much Tekken 7 was?
Well, it's not. That's not my problem. The problem being is that, Black Friday is always on a Friday. I used to work Fridays. Now that I don't work Fridays, I never have money on Black Friday.
That doesn't make any sense to me. But
yeah, it's like right in between paychecks. Anyways.
Yeah, it's called budgeting. It's called being an adult.
Adulting.
We're going to start off with Destiny 2. I don't know if people get it, but we're Destiny 2 fans, even though we haven't played. I haven't touched the game in like 2 or 3 weeks.
That's because we maxed out.
But there's a couple of items, Destiny 2 items. There's a Destiny 2 free trial went up today, which we're recording on a Monday, but it's out on Tuesday, so it should be out on PS4, PC, and Xbox One. The trial includes the EDZ on Earth, which is the European Dead Zone on Earth, and the Moon Titan. That's what it's included in the demo, in the trial, as well as you can visit the farm. You will have access to campaign mission and adventure set in those worlds. You can play the Crucible, but you can only play in quick play, so that's kind of the restriction they have, and be able to join a clan. Which quick play, you can't do competitive.
Yeah,
right?
you can't do the competitive mode. That's
which
it.
is a little different.
When you do quick play, it's barely any different. Though.
It's fine. Yeah, you'll be good. You'll get a sense of what it is, what the game is as far as multiplayer, and then you can advance up to level 7, and your progress will carry over if you eventually decide to buy the game. Now this comes amid XP controversy for the game, that if somebody found out that if you power grind certain events, which is if you're a Destiny player, we're figuring out how to min-max everything, right? But somebody actually tested it and they found out that if you do certain events just right after the other, you can actually lose up to 95% XP of what you would get the initial time, versus 50% if you're just kind of going about the world and repeating different activities. And Bungie did come out with the statement, said they're deactivating the system for now. It's kind of like the EA and the loot box type of situation. We're like, for now, we're deactivating it. But those playing the demo, they wouldn't be affected by this anyways. Is that why they're putting it out there, Dalan? It's not don't worry about the XP. Let's get some new players, new fresh blood into the game.
Well, they didn't want to focus on the experience part, and on top of that, they don't want you to just grind out those the bright Ingrams, because you just keep getting bright Ingrams if you can just grind out whatever gives you the most XP really fast.
Well, but that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is decentivizes you to replay levels, and they're like, I'm not getting any XP, I should just buy them.
Well, or you could just go do another level.
That's true. I mean, that is one of the cool things that Destiny has done, where it's like, do whatever you want. Don't just get stuck in
certain events,
like the cave, the loot cave that we would do in Destiny 1. There was a cave that we would go up and kind of figure out the movements of the enemies.
You
and
wouldn't
when
even
they
figure
would
out
spawn.
the movements. You just stand there and wait for them to come out and shoot them in the head. There was no going anywhere. After a certain amount of kills, they just dropped good loot.
So I think Bungie has done a good job as far as that's concerned, where they've, they're like, go do different stuff. Do what does your friend have to do? What mission?
Yeah,
can
that's
you
the
join
thing.
them
I
on?
realize that they're very driven to get players to go do other things, because in Destiny 1, there's that issue where things will go dead. They will go dead. Like, you won't go back to them at all. There's no reason for you to really go back.
Oh, you're saying as far as activities, there's why would you go back?
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, in Destiny 1, there was a point where people just didn't need to do public events anymore. So nobody went and did public events. Yeah. There was a point where people didn't need to do patrols until they gave people a reason to go do patrols. In this case...
It's a balance they have to hit, man. It's a hard balance. You kind of understand that it's a hard balance where they're like, we would complain about in Destiny 1, where coming from that, we're like, we got to do the same thing over and over. We have to find a route to get the spindle, the materials that we needed. We knew a route, so it would respawn the new material as we made a loop around the world.
We had that whole circle around each stage.
But now it's like, we got to the end now. We're like at the end. Like we're like, okay. So I haven't played it in like 2 or 3 weeks, and part of it is we already talked about it, right?
Well,
it's
for
like
us, you
part of
say
the
it
way-
was.
the way you get the
You
loot.
could say it's at the end, but the thing was, they made you go back to get the 305 gear. You couldn't just earn 305 gear off the bat. You had to literally build up to that level. That was something that we had the difficulty doing with in this particular game because.
Well, you just don't get the drop. You just don't get the drop. You have to go back to the tower. And you have to pull on the lever and hope.
You pull on the lever, hope you get a good. Good
concerning the demo though, is it? I was thinking about it. I was looking it up and I was like, oh man, Destiny 1 didn't do it, but Destiny 1 did have a demo actually.
It did have a
trial demo. This one, for whatever reason, it seems like it's coming out soon, like quicker. But you know, I mean, Destiny 1 did have a beta. It had an alpha, and then it actually had an actual demo a couple months after release.
No, it had the demo before the game came out because that's
alpha and beta. Alpha and beta. Don't get it mixed up.
Whatever.
Alpha and beta is not a demo. It's an alpha and beta, which is. Yes, glorified demo, if you will.
It's a glorified demo. And you were able to hit level 8. You were able to do all
but your
the
progress wouldn't carry over.
Yeah, it did.
No, it didn't. Not from the alpha and beta, but maybe from the demo that came out a couple months after
Oh,
the
that's right. They
game.
reset us, didn't they? They said it was going to carry
Don't mix
over.
me up, all right?
Yeah,
Don't try to get me all worked up over this.
I forgot.
But anyway, it just, for whatever reason, it's pretty cool, though, when you think about it, because we have December 5th, you got the new expansion pack coming, expansion coming out, so that for them to have a demo is a good way to kind of see what friends you can kind of have them join into the game, and hopefully they join us and stick around, because I threw it in the group chat and it's like, hey man, I'm open, you guys it's a free demo, it crosses over, so, and it gets us off of this whole XP nonsense that we'll see. I mean, they got a stream coming up today, tomorrow. It's on Tuesday.
Don't think about it too hard.
This week, I'm pretty sure they're gonna have the third and final stream concerning the expansion. So we'll see. Maybe they address the XP situation. But that's it for now. Go ahead and try out the demo if you're.
Join us as the Guardians.
Join us.
Maybe we get to look at you and say good bubble. All right, now another piece of information out there. This piece of news, apparently it's hitting a couple of sites. Is Epic, the creators of Fortnite, they're over there trying to sue multiple people for using aim bots and cheating in their game. And one of these characters that they actually released out to the public, one of the people using the aim bots.
Yeah.
Okay, of course, humans are using the bots to cheat in their game. Okay. But apparently, one of these characters is a 14-year-old, and Epic is suing a 14-year-old.
Oh, see, you keep saying characters. I'm like, you talking about a human, a person.
Okay,
a person,
that's where your confusion is.
That's why
I apologize if you're confused by the word character.
Human. Okay, a person.
Anyways, they're suing a 14-year-old kid. How's that sound? Mm-hmm. For using these aim bots that were, of course, some were free to download on some website. And the mother was very, very upset.
Like her son, 14-year-old son, is getting sued over here.
Yeah, 14-year-old's getting sued over here. The mother even wrote a letter stating how they're trying to use the kid as a scapegoat. I mean, she was using some powerful terms.
I saw something like that, yeah.
Epic was trying to say that they had a mass profit loss for a free-to-play game.
Okay.
I don't know how you do. Well, I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Yeah. Another thing she stated is that Epic had violated Delaware law by actually putting out into the public that kid's information.
Okay.
He's underage. He's a minor.
He's protected. Should be protected in that sense. Yeah.
Do you think the mother is in the right?
Yeah, of course she is, man. Of course she is. Come on, you come up after some kids, and I get it. You want to. You want them to take cheating seriously, right? Like you want it to, but there should be. I don't know. They took it pretty seriously. I heard the story a little bit about how they're suing different people, right? And this is just one of the people.
Yeah, this just happens to be one of the people in that group.
Now for the 14-year-old, I don't know if you saw it in the story. Is it like were they able to identify he was a 14-year-old, or he just happened to be one of the people they picked out, and they didn't know whether he was underage or not?
That was one of the things that I couldn't actually find anything on. There was no actual news article in regards to whether or not they did this on purpose or they did it on accident. Yeah. So if they did do it on purpose, shame on Epic.
Yeah. I mean, whatever happened to You just banned them. They're banned. You're banned. Get off of our
Nah,
server.
they want to
What
deter
happened?
people from cheating.
Yeah,
I guess
they
Fortnite's
wanna
being a
make
little
an
too
example.
serious.
They want to make an example of somebody. I understand that, but
Scapegoat?
I like as far as the mom being in the right. Yeah, of course she's in the right, man. I mean, it's a kid underage. Your son's getting sued. It's like, really? And you could kind of say that it was like the whole what do you call EULA or whatever, the agreement that we all made is like, you're not supposed to do this and do that. And I think one of the arguments for her was that, okay, you can throw that at us, that we made an agreement as to there's supposed to be fair play. And I think her argument is that, well, I didn't consent.
Yeah, she did not consent
I didn't
to
consent
it.
for him to sign this legally binding document, which is the thing that we all sign in the beginning of a game.
Nobody reads that thing.
I don't read it.
Nobody reads
it. I mean, maybe we should, but I definitely don't.
I've read it like twice, and I'm like, nah, I'm not doing it again. I can't do it.
So it's one of those things. Of course, she's right. Epic is. They're trying to make an example, right?
Two
of someone.
questions.
But
I
mean,
for
an underage person. I'm pretty sure they can find a cheating of age person.
I'm sure they can. They can find plenty of teens and adults doing it. But two questions I got in regards to this: how do you think it'll affect Epic's reputation?
I don't know. I think it'll be something that's swept under the rug. Probably.
I guess
man.
It depends on how quickly they handle it.
You know what? Us as gamers, it's very easy to like win us over to it. It's kind of like, we're gonna keep playing the game. I mean, you're a terrible company for doing this, but
we're gonna play.
As long as we have our game, we're gonna continue playing it. And I believe it's a free-to-play game, and their battle royale mode, which is kind of ripping off of PUBG's mode, supposedly. Which whatever. To me, it's like, well, what did you expect? Like, to me, the PUBG thing is like, what did you expect? You make something popular, of course they're gonna sweep in and try to create it. But the game's free to play. You can either play it or not. And I think for the most part, you see like the quote unquote right or wrong in this, where like, well, don't cheat.
Don't cheat.
So I'm trying to play.
I don't want you to cheat.
We're trying to keep a fair, balanced, gameplay.
All right,
situation.
then my last question in regards to this is how do you feel about Epic's claim about it being a mass profit loss?
It's BS, man.
It's BS. It's
like,
it's a free to play game.
It's a free to play game. It's like I understand. I get it. What is the foundation? Like why is it to them that they're losing money? They didn't really.
I could only assume that it would be like one of those word of mouth things, where if you have somebody cheating, that it's going to deter people from playing the game, and then when they roll out actual paying copies, that they're going to have less to actually buy into.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it plays out in the court system. I guess.
Hopefully they drop it.
They need to find somebody of age.
Yeah, they need to drop that kid from the whole suit. They need to drop that claim.
But we'll move on to the next thing. Now, I like to, since we're 7 episodes in. It feels like we've been doing this forever. I think. Right?
Do we? Do you?
But I feel like people should probably know our history. So over the weekend, and it was a slow news week. I mean, we just had Thanksgiving, and it's a little slower. But Game Crate, which is a video game reviews, they write articles, they write opinion pieces. On Twitter, I saw them bring up an interesting question, and their question was, which consoles were better to own, through the generations. And I figured we could run them down real quick and say what we owned and if you regretted that console of choice at the time. So the first one I have here, and we'll go through the times. I know we're not that old to have Atari 2600.
I had an Atari.
Well, you had one, but...
No, I played the hell out of it.
But what was the competition? This is like, it is the fanboy type of thing, right? So you could really... I think it really set up... Well, you had the ColecoVision and television.
Yeah, I don't know about all that. That was way before me.
That's what I'm saying. But you might have had an Atari 2600, but were you really conceiving like Atari 2600 was dominant?
It was. It definitely was. I used to play those games with my parents and my sister
and
all
then
the time.
The industry was blown up. They oversaturated it with really bad product, and
threw out games.
Retailers didn't want to touch them with the 6-foot pole, So it took the NES, it took the Nintendo to bring it back. So during the 85, 86, and they introduced it with like Rob the Robot, or was it Rob the Robot?
Yeah,
or something like that. So they introduced it as a toy to bring back it, to have retailers carry it. So the NES dropped 85, 86, 85, like it started in New York, like a limited launch, and then it went wide in 86. But there was another little system. I don't know if you remember. It's called the Master System. The Sega Master System
I remember seeing things about it, but I never had one. Never
now,
really
out of the
seen
two,
one.
the clear winner was NES, right? Correct. Like,
wait, out of the Master System
out
and
of
the Atari?
Master System and the NES.
Oh, out of the Master System. Oh, that's right, because NES and Master System were having that whole
time.
little competition
85.
thing that they were having.
But Sega was like NES a blip, man. It was a tiny blip. I did have one though. I did have a Master System. I never knew what it was.
One?
Yes, when I was growing up, I had a Master System. It had like, I was like, this is like an NES, but dumb, but weird.
You poor unfortunate soul.
Well, I mean, I had an NES too, but I'm saying like a Master System was. I just happened to have it at some point. I played maybe Kid, Alex the Kid, or something like that, or whatever the game was.
Man, you're making.
It
sounds like you just made up.
It sounds like I made it up. It's something like that, and I played it a little bit. I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And it had it wasn't even a D-pad. It was like a square, like a rounded square type situation. It wasn't really fully a D-pad. So. Those NES was the clear winner, right?
Yes.
Then we're going into
100%.
the second generation, which was a big kind of deal. And it was actually, they even made a book called Console Wars for this, the Genesis versus the SNES. Genesis released in 89, probably, wanted to get the head start because they got beat in the NES era. So Genesis was 89, SNES was in 1990. What did you own during that?
I owned a Super Nintendo versus a Sega Genesis. Though I kind of wanted a Sega Genesis, but then at the same time, I was kind of glad I didn't have one because even though those
really
graphics
only had Sonic.
Yeah, even though it had beautiful graphics, it only really had like 4 or 5 games that were actually playable.
Yeah. But I think it was when it was the closest, like neck and neck. These guys are battling it out because I think it had like maybe about 50-50. Probably SNES had more, but it was sort of like 50-50 during that time because the Genesis, the whole Nintendo thing and the Genesis can with Nintendo.
Well, it felt like Sega Genesis was trying to catch up with Nintendo. Super Nintendo released Aladdin, and then suddenly Genesis released Aladdin. Their own version.
That was an issue where Nintendo they so dominated during the NES era that they had rules in place where if you had to release a separate version of whatever game, like you couldn't release. Now they don't care, right? You have them on whatever.
You'll get
system.
A carbon copy.
You're getting an identical carbon copy on every system. But back then it was like you better make a different version of the game. So yeah, I had an SNES, and I did kind of was like jealous that people who had the Genesis. Like, I wish I had it, but I thought it was good.
I was
the
a
only
little
problem
jealous
with
too. I'll admit that.
The only problem with that generation was that I had like the bad games. I didn't have Final Fantasies. I didn't have Chrono Trigger. I didn't play any of these.
Some of the great ones.
I had just licensed stuff like The Lion King, Aladdin. Yeah, I played Aladdin and just the Mario Brothers. Games,
I know. I
course.
came up with some obscure games. Arrow, their Acrobat. Was fun for me.
Pretty sure.
Paperboy 2.
I'm pretty sure I never had Star Fox. I never had Yoshi's Island. Nothing like it was like, what did I play? But clearly,
what were you doing with your life as a child?
The SNES won that generation, right? Going to the next generation, we had PlayStation released in '95, the Saturn in '95, which is it was at E3. They announced it and they released it like it's out today, and they're like. Really? You guys could have gave us some more warning.
Now, I know you're saying PlayStation and Saturn, but around the same time, the 64 dropped. Because I remember seeing the both.
So, PlayStation 95, Saturn 95, and 64, Nintendo 64 was in 1996. So, out of these, it's weird. I could have either had a PlayStation or a Saturn. For whatever reason, I was like, maybe because it's going to the SNES time, I was like, I wish I had a Sega system. I went for a Sega Saturn for Christmas. And I asked my
know some
mom,
people went for that. I mean, like Vector Man, that was a really enticing.
Vector Man was Genesis. Are you talking about
I'm talking about
you would have wanted the Genesis?
Yeah, why you would have wanted the Genesis. Because that was one of the games I was looking at. I was like, Vector Man looks so cool. I want that game.
I think some of that came into play where I was like, I want a PlayStation, I want a Saturn. I was like, yeah, but I always wanted a Genesis for whatever reason. And it was a Saturn with, I think it might have been the same price as the PlayStation, but it came with like Virtual Cop, Daytona.
Nights.
No, it didn't come with Knights. It was Virtual Cop, Virtual Fighter, might have been 2, and so it came with like 3 games. So I was like, oh, I get 3 games and a Saturn, but it was not the best choice.
That
it
was
not the best
choice. And even then, you played it. At least you got to experience it.
And even then, I didn't have the best games either. I didn't have Panzer Dragoon Saga. I didn't have Enemy Zero. I didn't have anything that you would ever consider.
Every game that you just mentioned, I'm like, I don't know none of these games.
These are great games. These are great games that I missed out. But I did have a N64 though. N64 was kind of like, it was the Saturn. At some point, I just gave up on it. And then
Gave up on it
N64 was
and
my
moved on to
system.
64.
Even on the N64, I didn't play the greatest games. I never played Ocarina of
Wait,
Time.
you completely missed out on the PlayStation altogether?
Oh yeah, completely.
Oh man,
PlayStation
Crash
1.
Bandicoot,
That was your system,
Final
I'm guessing.
Fantasy, all that. I was into it. I still got some of my games from that time, as a matter of fact. I'm pretty sure.
What was your play? You only had during this era. You only had a PlayStation, or you had a Saturn?
I know I had a
or
64. I did not have a Saturn. I wasn't gonna go for that.
Okay.
But I had the 64. I had very few games for the 64. I had like Wave Race, Mario 64, Mario Kart 64, GoldenEye. I had some of the great hits. Quest 64 was one of my favorites, but nonetheless,
Quest 64, huh?
Yeah, Quest 64.
That was a Camelot game, I believe.
Yeah,
Okay.
it took me a while to beat that one, but either way it goes. Yeah, I played those type of games. Goemon, if you even know what that is.
Yeah, I definitely missed out. The PlayStation was I could missed out on that whole generation.
Yeah, but everything I was just saying was Core 64. The
okay.
PlayStation were things like Final Fantasy, Crash Bandicoot, Jet Moto. I mean, I was playing all these different games.
Trust me, I was looking at these games. I was like, I wish I had a PlayStation, but I never did. I never did. Out of the two, you would say the PlayStation.
Oh,
was
the PlayStation overly dominated
versus the N64. To me, I had a Saturn N64. It would have been an N64 for me. I wish I would have been in that during the PlayStation 1 era, but I wasn't. Well, eventually, emulators came into play, and it had like a.
You could go back and play those games.
You could go ahead if you had the disc. You had the disc, right? You had the disc. You put it into your PC and to emulate. You could play it that way.
I do got to say that there were a couple of games for the N64 that kind of dominated, that make you look at the 64 and say, is it better than the PlayStation? You only needed a few games.
Well, I mean, Nintendo's just masters, man. They've been masters of gameplay. I mean, the Super Mario 64 was like incredible. It's like, this is how you handle a 3D game. Even like a decade later, developers couldn't figure out, like, how do we make 3D space like available to us? How can we make it so it's good to play? And N64 beat it, and then the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time created the Z trigger or the lock-on system, which everyone's copied. Basically, it really changed the game. So it was those games were few and far between. Was the problem?
Okay, I gotta say, between the two, I would say PlayStation won in sales because of all the games that they dished out, but N64 won when it came to replay value. Just period. PlayStation didn't have much replay value.
Now the N64, the problem, you did feel, if that was your system, you felt it. You had
that's all you needed.
You had to play GoldenEye. You had to play. I played Diddy Kong Racing, which is weird. I know people are like,
fine.
"What do you mean Mario Kart? You didn't play Mario?" I was like, "Nope, my game was Diddy Kong Racing."
Mario Kart 64. What was it? Smash Brothers. That's where that came out at.
So the next generation was Dreamcast, launched in 1990. We'll talk about the Dreamcast a little more. They just celebrated a anniversary, but Dreamcast in 99, PS2 in 2000, GameCube in 2001, and then the Xbox, the OG Xbox in 2001. So I owned. Actually, this is the time when I was believe like in working age. I was a teenager, I guess. During this time, I was able to afford my own. Get my own Dreamcast, get my own PS2, GameCube, Xbox. I had all four of them, and definitely for me was the Dreamcast was the one that like really impacted me. Of course, it only lasted a year and a half.
It didn't matter. It lasted a lot longer than that for me. I was over there playing Phantasy Star Online for way too long.
Which ones did you own in this generation? Dreamcast, PS2, GameCube, Xbox. Which?
In that particular generation, I was owning the PS2 and the GameCube. I wanted a Dreamcast, but never really got around to it.
You never got into an Xbox, the OG Xbox?
No, that's another thing that I really wanted at all the systems. I mean, I had my GameCube, I had my PlayStation 2, but I wanted to have the Xbox as well because all my friends are talking about all these great games dropping for it, but I didn't have enough money to buy one.
It was a good generation, man. It was a good generation.
People were out there putting chips in their Xbox.
It was a time. It was a time when the graphics were getting a little better. You were still amazed. Like that was the thing, right? Like we went into the PlayStation, Saturn, N64 era was like very crude 3D graphics.
Halo.
And then Dreamcast, PS2, GameCube. Then Halo was perfect too. Halo was incredible. And this is a generation that ushered in online gaming with the Dreamcast with that beautiful 56K modem that
Phantasy Star Online.
For people that don't know, is the internet. You used to have to unplug your phone to be able to plug in the internet. So yes, I would be over here playing NFL 2K, disconnecting the phone line from the house, and my parents are like, who's connected to the Dreamcast.
I'm trying to make a phone call.
So, and this is a generation that we started to get kind of like the 3D action adventure shooters were starting to get established, but it wasn't until the next generation, I would argue that it wasn't until the 360, PS3, Wii U that we really started to get shooters. Actually, shooters
that's when
started
it
to get
really
popular.
Focused.
It was that 360 came out in 2005. They were trying to beat the PlayStation. They took a page out of Genesis book, I guess, and trying to beat.
Well, they did kind of pick up Sonic. And
trying to beat the PS3 to market. The Xbox 360 was 2005. PS3 2006. The Wii 2006, and then the Wii U. I kind of threw it in there because it's at the tail end 2012. I can't. But
that was kind of a break.
And this generation again. I pretty much had every system. You start making money. You can afford these different systems. But
one thing I do want to say about all this, regardless of the span of time over all these generations, Nintendo having one domination over all of them.
Yeah.
Handheld.
Oh yeah, that's right. Handheld. Well, yeah, handheld has dominated. And then there was the
Nintendo dominated handheld.
I think
period.
the PSP probably gave it a little bit of a run for its money, but not really, man.
No, it didn't. It was the most pirated system that was ever.
Well, yeah,
released.
but that's what kept it selling. Actually, that's actually what kept it selling more than the Vita. Like pirates looked at the Vita and like, I can't crack this, so why would I want this? So the PSP actually, I mean, it never eclipsed it, but I would say it might have hit like 15-20% of like 80-20, which to the vice grip that Nintendo has on that handheld market, I think it was admirable.
Man, actually, Microsoft didn't even attempt it, and PSP Go kind of shot themselves
from
in the
foot. 360, PS3, Wii U era. What was your favorite system out of the three?
Well, I never owned a Wii. That was a problem. But I had a PS3. And I later on got an Xbox 360. So those are the two systems that I really like. Yeah. But I had an Xbox 360 and that got stolen. So I moved to PS3.
It's funny. Yeah, like, it was, for me, the previous generation was Dreamcast and then PS2 kind of took over, and I played some on the Xbox and GameCube for Metroid Prime, of course. Let's not forget that. But for the most part, it was PS2, and it was funny that on the 360 I kind of flipped because it was the first system. It beat it to market, HD graphics. The games were like, look amazing. Which you go back and like the early generation of 360,
blocky.
They're very plasticky. They're actually very plasticky.
Oh no, 64 was blocky. That's what it was.
So it's funny that for the 360 generation, I don't know if you remember, but it was a sleeker system. It was a cheaper system. And, it did have Call of Duty 2 on it. So shooters were good. Like, you actually wanted to play it on these systems. So for the, like, halfway through all that generation, I think I was more 360 than PS3. And then Sony got their act together, because I don't know if you remember, but when the PS3 launched, they were talking about it was like $600 or $500.
Oh no, I remember
and
that.
They were saying like, I don't know if it was Ken Kutaragi or one of the higher ups. They were like, you will get a second job.
You will get a second job, and you will buy it. No, I won't. No.
So, but eventually PS3 got its act together.
They made it backwards compatible for PS2 for a while.
Trophies in there, which I'm still addicted to them to this day.
That changed the game right there. Was trophies.
So that was to me that was a split generation, because I played a lot of the Wii, a lot of the PS2, a lot of the 360, and like I said, I think it was 360, then on to PS3, and then eventually it got me to like, I'm just grabbing the next PlayStation.
Gamers were making leaps and bounds. That's what that was.
Yeah, and now we're kind of at a stage where PS4 in 2013, Xbox One in 2013, and then the Switch just released this year. But these are the systems where it's like, oh, now we're moving into like half steps. Now it's like,
where
it's
do
not
we go
gonna
from
be
here?
So now we're kind of getting maybe to a point of diminishing returns. So and we're still talking about this stuff. Now we got microtransactions to worry about, and the online is so smooth.
They're more focused on their game development than they are the system development, which is fine with me in the long run.
And like it's been in all of time is the Switch, the Nintendo still hasn't figured out online. So
still haven't figured out online. They gave you hotspots, but that's about it.
Yeah.
All right, but talking about all these old school games, one thing Carlos over here touched base on for a moment was Dreamcast had its 19th anniversary as of yesterday in Japan. Came out in I can't remember exactly what year it was, but
1998. It was
1998.
It was still during that time where Japan would get the systems like a year prior to.
So it was kind of awkward to look at the fact that we here in America got it in September 9th, 1999. 9999. That was the whole point of releasing it that day. So excited to go get it when I went and freaking got it. I went to the store. first thing I wanted was Marvel's Capcom 2 or Marvel's Capcom 1. Because that's the system.
When did you get the Dreamcast? What?
I never owned a Dreamcast.
Oh, you never owned.
I never
you
owned
just
a
said
Dreamcast.
you went to go get it.
No, well, okay. I went with my friend to go get one, and he picked it up. Right. But I was over at his house all the time. So
it basically was yours.
Yeah, it was basically mine. Him, my friend, my other friend Matthew picked up one. I know I'm dropping random names here, but for the Dreamcast, it came out with things like Skies of Arcadia. I know that was a favorite for you. Marvel's Capcom, like I said, Crazy Taxi, Shenmue, Grandia, Sonic Adventures, which started Sonic on the whole 3D bit.
They've been trying for a while. It took them forever. But yeah, they've been trying for a while.
But I know there was that 1 year gap in between Japan and America releasing it. How do you feel about that little tiny gap that they had?
Well, it was like a year gap, man. It was a good, but it was good. The games were developed. They were ready to go. So when 99.99, I don't know if you remember, but Soul Calibur was a launch title.
Oh, that's right.
Soul
Calibur
was a launch title.
Man.
Sonic Adventure.
I'm Sonic Adventure was a launch title.
And then like a couple months later, man, you started to get Tony Hawk 2. I played Tony Hawk 2 like that's my memory, just playing it on the Dreamcast. I still remember plunking down $50 whole for a new copy of Tony Hawk 2 and a Sonic Adventure Greatest Hits or whatever.
Where was Jet Grind Radio at?
Jet Grind, when it released?
Yeah, what system did it release on?
Dreamcast.
It was Dreamcast. That was you and Jet Grind Radio.
That's where I got into Jet Grind Radio. Sonic Adventure. Now I know better, and I try to go play it back.
Back then, it was an excellent game, but now you look at it, you're like,
it has not aged well.
No, it
at
has
all.
not.
But some of those games are still pretty good. I was just playing Crazy Taxi the other day. It was still pretty good. It's a fun arcade game. Jet Grind Radio or Jet Set Radio. It plays well enough. It's still so weird but I mean, when you consider the Dreamcast controller, you didn't have double triggers, or you didn't have a shoulder and a trigger like we do now. So what the smart idea that they had was like, we're gonna have the spray button and the camera on the same button on the same trigger. So you had to switch the camera to snap it forward.
Yeah,
it was the same as the tag button.
But that didn't really transfer over. It doesn't.
But the music is still incredible, man. The music still holds up. It's amazing.
Well,
and then Shenmue was this whole big epic game that was spread over 3 discs.
It created its own. It created its own little following. But let me ask you this: what do you miss about the Dreamcast?
I think it was a period of time where it was unbridled creativity. It
this
was
beautiful white shell of a system.
Well, it was a system, but Sega was like at a peak. It was like at a peak. Like they were Skies of Arcadia, Shenmue, Jet Grind Radio, even like some of the like games that weren't too good, like Space Channel 5, and then you had Seaman that you actually spoke into
Seaman.
it. So and then online, they had the whole online system.
You
had Ready to Rumble.
Card.
You had they even had broadband, but it hadn't taken off at that point. But so you were dealing with 56K, but they even had broadband, Phantasy Star Online. It was just an incredible, innovative system. It was an exciting time. It was probably like it was a turn of the century.
We're going to the 2000s. We needed those,
but it was such a little system. It was like the little system that just. My understanding is that the Saturn was such a big failure that had followed them to the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast apparently was doing well in Japan and in the U.S., but it just wasn't doing well enough.
No, you know why though, right?
For the failure of the Saturn.
But one of the biggest problems with it was the fact that people were just copying games outright and just playing them.
I mean, piracy, sure.
That's when piracy was a really huge issue. The 700 megabyte discs.
I don't think it was. You know what? One of the big problems. So I think one of the problems was they were in the red due to the Saturn. But a big problem was it didn't have EA. It didn't have EA. Imagine a PlayStation 4. As much as we hate EA, right? I'm saying the royal we, the royal we, right? Because to me, they're a company. They're whatever it is, they do their business, whether it's good or bad or whatever you think of them. But if you have no EA, you don't have no Battlefront. You don't have Madden. You don't have at the time it was NBA Live. You don't have NHL hockey or whatever.
You don't have sports.
You just don't have sports, but you don't have this whole like plethora of games. They're still a big publisher.
Yeah,
it's one of the big three. So I think that's really a big thing that it's like. It kind of crushed them. I mean, EA was so big that it actually, like Xbox, I don't know if you remember, but the original Xbox had its own sports titles.
I do remember that.
And EA, one of its conditions were like, well, something it had enough power where they had basically told Microsoft at some point, you need to shut that down. Well, you need to, like, we don't want you to make that anymore. I think it was to be able to get the online going. Like, don't 100% quote me, but it was something where it was like EA got them to shut down those games, their own set of, online games or whatever it was.
Well, another big problem.
So the Dreamcast, it kind of would affect the Dreamcast. I think Activision wasn't doing too much on it either.
Nah, they weren't doing a lot.
Tony
they were
Hawk,
doing a couple of games, but not a lot. Yeah. But I think another one of their big problems was the fact that they were releasing games before the system came out.
Yeah, I mean
that was a huge. That was their
what do you mean?
That's what they did. Like a good week before the system came out, they surprisingly
they just want you to be ready. They wanted to be ready for launch. I don't think that's not a bigger deal than EA not wanting to support.
Yeah, I understand.
And the other thing was like the looming danger of the PS2, man. The PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 2 was like ready to go. So I think a lot of it was people were like, the Dreamcast, I'm just gonna save my money for the PS2, and even though it might have done well enough, that it still probably affected them. But that took a while.
I know, because we were on those games.
Move on to our honorable mentions. We'll keep it quick. We'll keep it brief. Dalan, Capcom will release a new DLC character pack for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, including Venom, which is, he can shapeshift and attack nearly all angles of the battlefield. This is according to US Gamer, because I'm not a fighting game expert. Black Widow specializes in aerial attacks, and the Winter Soldier, who specializes in ground attacks. It's out on December 5, and these are included in the character pass. I believe it's probably you can buy them separately, right?
Yeah, most likely at some point.
Does it make you want to jump into the game? Or?
No, not at all.
Okay,
I was too mad at them for what they did just from the get-go. They still don't have their X-Men characters out there correctly. So until they actually fix what they did with Marvel, because it's Marvel versus Capcom, I think I'm going to stay away from that game.
What is it that they did?
They took out all the X-Men characters.
There's no X-Men game.
There's
in
no
Marvel
X-Men
vs.
characters.
Capcom
They're not there.
Venom is considered an X-Men character, right?
Spider-Man. What the?
Hey, we keep it clean at Salient points. All right?
Yeah, I didn't say anything bad about it. I will throw some at your forehead.
All right. Anyways, I'm okay. I don't really need to know all that, so it's fine.
All right, but I can say, even though they changed the button schemes and the way that the characters move and the storyline.
You have played it, though.
Yeah, I did play it. I played the demo when it first came out. I was just upset at the fact that they changed the character roster and it significantly reduced it for whatever reason.
Does this make it a little better? Black Widow, Winter Soldier, Venom?
They're starting to build up their roster again, which I'm okay with. But once they get a big enough roster, then I might go touch it. But I'm not going to buy it.
All right.
Next quick one being related. How is it related?
Marvel Heroes team lays off.
The Marvel Heroes team laid off their entire staff during the holiday week, or at least just before Thanksgiving. As a matter of fact, November 24th, and they had no severance pay. Okay. As a matter of fact, they were originally supposed to disband on December 31st, but they moved it up.
They were like, nah, you don't have an extra month. Okay.
Nah, they took it away from them. Yeah. But this being said, either December 31st, just before New Year's, or 24th of November, just before Thanksgiving, take your pick. Which one do you think was better?
You know what? It's never easy, man. It's never easy. And the company is Gazillion, right?
Yeah, Gazillion Entertainment.
On Marvel Heroes. And I was hearing an interview. Actually, if you guys want to hear an interview that went up yesterday through Kind of Funny Games, they actually interviewed one of the guys who, Anthony Gallegos, who actually used to work at One Up, and I believe he went to IGN and eventually got himself into the development side of stuff. It's very interesting how he goes over it that they were trying with this game, and it was like a sort of a mobile game at first, and then they introduced it 3 years later. Or it was a PC game, actually. I believe it was a PC game, right?
Well, they ended up releasing it as a PC game later. Yeah. So it was originally a mobile game. And then
it eventually came into consoles, but it was a 3-year-old game at that point. So that was kind of like its last gasp, but trying to...
It's a little Diablo-esque type game. Yeah. People weren't really into that at that point, with the exception of Diablo 3, but they had... Diablo 3.
So my understanding as far as that is that it was one of those things where they didn't meet certain requirements, and either Disney was like, all right, we're not doing it anymore, or we're shutting it down, or whatever it is. So it's unfortunate. It just, this is what happens, man. It's an industry where you gotta really love what you do, and yeah, it's high paying. I would think it's high paying, but at the same time, you got to deal with this. You better have a certain amount of savings. You better know how to budget, because once your project is done, it's done. But the thing with this is kind of like it's been around for a couple
of years.
So
it's got to die at some point.
You get comfortable, and unfortunately, Gazillion. This is one of the things that Anthony Gallegos talks about is that they didn't diversify.
It was not diversified.
Well, it's because he brought up the examples of like say Insomniac or Insomniac. They have the Spider-Man game, but they also do VR projects on the side, and they have different games, and they can work for Microsoft or Sony or whoever they want. And it's kind of like Gazillion didn't have that. They had Marvel Heroes.
Yeah, some gaming companies though, most gaming companies come up with just one game and then skyrocket, which was basically the basis for creating a company anyway. Yeah. But I guess nowadays it doesn't work that way. But it's kind of sad because I like the name Gazillion Entertainment. I'm gonna miss that.
But it's been it's been like this. It's been project to project. As if it doesn't work out, we gotta go. We got it. So the next thing we got on the honorable mentions is So this is kind of a little tidbit, right? 1 million VR headsets have shipped in the 3 months ending September 30th of this year. VentureBeat reports that Sony was the market share leader with shipments of 490,000 PlayStation VR set. Facebook's Oculus was number 2 with 210,000. Rift headsets shipped. HTC came in third with 160,000 Vive VR headsets. Discounts had a lot to do with the success of the VR headsets in this third quarter. And Sony does have a few PSVR bundles, which include Skyrim VR, Doom VR, and Gran Turismo. But I don't know, Dalan, when does VR go mainstream? When do we get there? Is this a sign, maybe? I know Sony had kind of like they had talked about they had sold like 900,000 and they had slowed to a trickle, and I'm guessing all these discounts recently and all that stuff, it's kind of had them sell more.
Well, the thing about the VR in itself is they've tried a couple of times to do VR. So I was actually kind of taken aback at the fact that VR even took off the way that it did. But I guess millennials and iGen people, they're enjoying their
what
iGen.
What's iGen?
The new generation.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
iGen,
sure.
the new iGen.
The iGen. Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah,
I
it's
think
iGen.
That's what, okay. I'm not. Okay, fine. I'll take it. I'll accept it.
But the new iGen and the millennials, they're getting the systems that they've always wanted. Because as kids, we always wanted to see what an actual VR would be like, and now we got at least something that won't kill us while we're looking into a screen.
It's definitely one of those things where it was high optimism, but then the reality set in. I was like, man, like even me, I do have the PlayStation VR, and to me, it's like I have it plugged in, but at the same time, like I don't want to play today. I feel like it's too much of a hassle. So I think eventually, for it to get mainstream, it does have to be easier. It has to be more streamlined. It has to be. It's a wireless headset. Just put it on. It's already somehow connected to the back of your set, where you turn it on. Like the Switch. The Switch, when you put it into the dock, it actually switches the channel for you and everything. It just goes to where you need it to go.
It's technology, man.
It's technology, but you would think Nintendo's not that advanced. So
I'm very much ready. I'm very much ready for a holodeck.
VR. Yeah, the VR will get us there.
All right.
What else we got, Dalan?
We got one for Call of Duty World War II. Mm-hmm. Apparently, they leaked a video about some new game modes that people weren't sure if they were going to be coming back. Things like Gun Game. That's what it was called. Gun Game, Demolition, Infected, Control. All these little party games that might be brought back to Call of Duty, and in a World War II setting. Would you be excited about playing these party games once again?
Yeah, the main one, I don't know about the party games, actually. I'm not too sure about that.
Well, that's what they are.
Oh, you're saying that
they're group games.
They're group games. The gun game I really like. I've always liked it. Even Counter-Strike has one where it's like you start with the knife and then you graduate to a pistol.
The graduate system.
Yeah, it's basically a graduating, and I think you also get demoted. So I've always liked it. And we talked about Call of Duty World War II recently, and I played mostly the campaign, but I could see how those weapons are like old school weapons. It's kind of a little more straightforward, not as busy. I hate busy. But gun game would be fun. I do remember playing gun game in a couple of Call of Duties ago. So it's been in the Call of Duty series. But hey, I'd be down to try it. And once this game gets cheap enough, I can pick it up for the multiplayer. We could do some multiplayer if you're interested, Dalan.
On a quick note, did you know gun game mode was actually in GoldenEye?
Was it? No, it was not.
It was. There was a gun game mode in GoldenEye, and I remember doing that with my friends.
Investigate this.
You can go ahead and investigate it if you want. But
all I remember about GoldenEye is those choppy 4-player split screen. Everybody shooting rockets. It brings down the game to 5 frames per second.
Those really blocky explosions. No, but I remember having to get the golden gun, and when I finished with the golden gun, it took me forever to kill somebody with a laser. So
okay, maybe
gun game mode is in there.
Okay, we'll have to go back to GoldenEye. You know, on second thought, maybe we don't.
We don't.
But you know what? Something that's gonna make it possibly sad, Dalan, is I don't want to get too nostalgic with this.
Too late.
But Demon Souls online servers will be shutting off on February 18, 2018.
If
you remember, the game launched on PS3 in February 2009. It's had a good 9 years of online activity. You will still be able to play it, but it'll lack cooperative play, PvP invasions, hint messages from others, and bloodstains showing the deaths of other players. So you'll be missing some of the online components of it. But are you gonna miss it? Are you gonna miss the online component?
Meh, I still got Dragon's Dogma. But for Demon's Souls, though, when I actually did play it, I played the heck out of that when that first came out. Okay. It was its own little type of challenging. And, of course, when that first golem comes up, you're just scared of it as soon as you walk into the room.
It brought that type of...
that horror,
nail-biting type of game to the masses, where it's like you have to know how your character's gonna move, and it moves in a deliberate way too.
Oh yeah.
So it's like I'm pretty like in the middle of your animation, you'll be like, I messed up, but
I've committed.
Much like the Warlock jump in Destiny, you gotta commit. You gotta commit to that. You gotta commit to that jump. So they've kept it around since 2009.
Well, to say for the fact that they're taking down the server, I could still play the game without the server because originally that's how I was playing the game anyway. Though it was fun to invade other people's games and go destroy them and be done with it. I still enjoyed the actual game itself. So as long as you can continue to play the game without having to be online, which is what I did, it's not a big problem. Though it takes away some of the aspects, it's still a good game. I'd still play it as of today's date.
Don't be too sad about it.
Don't be too sad.
It's fine that it got shut
I promise I won't shed any tears. But another game that is coming out. Up note, that way I don't shed a tear. Overcooked will be having their own little physical copy coming to the Switch on February 13th of next year. This is going to be out to the U.S. Are you ready, Carlos?
I played it on PS4, and the Overcooked on Switch. So it's been out for a couple months, digital wise, but they've had a couple issues. I'm hoping that this physical one will finally bring it in line because it had frame rate problems.
Wait, digital for the Switch?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you can buy it digitally now on the Switch, but it's had problems, and I think they updated it already, where it's like, I really haven't heard too much if it's completely fixed. Hopefully this physical version next year will be more of an incentive for them to be like, we should actually make it run very, very smooth now that it's a physical.
That game is frustratingly fun.
It really is. We've played up to 4 players, right? It's like, get this, do that. No, don't do that.
But we can't stop playing. We don't care how angry it makes us.
Definitely very frustrating. We're gonna switch gears a little bit. The tone is all over the place.
It's okay.
But this one, so they recently found a tribute to the late Nintendo president Satoru Iwata. He was found in the Pokemon Ultra Sun and Pokemon Ultra Moon. And to give us a sense of how important he was to Pokemon developer Game Freak, there was a tribute found in the game when you come across an NPC that says, when we were having trouble fitting all the data in for gold and silver, and we were really in a pinch, this amazing guy came along and made a program for us that solved all our problems. He went on to become the amazing president of a real big company soon after that too. This shows that even at a top level, Satoru Iwata would still roll up his sleeves and get into the code.
Hard.
And he was getting into the code.
Somebody that enjoys making games for people.
Is it a fitting tribute? He's been passed away for a couple of years now, but a couple of years later, they still think about.
Because he's a man that actually put the effort into making games good. He
wasn't just
fun.
a money man. He wasn't just the guy that here's the money to make this or whatever.
You're selling these games to make money, but if you don't have a good product, and he knew this, and if the product wasn't good, then you're not going to be happy with the product that you're selling. And he just went back and worked on it constantly, going in and delving deep overnight workings to actually make these things functioned properly, which probably made the Pokemon world just excellent, just going forward. And they found their own little groove for video games.
Yeah, no, he was able to solve problems because a lot of it, in programming, it's like you solve problems, and it was like it's very cool that because I've heard this story before. It's been told where it's like in Gold and Silver, he actually found a way to solve. Either it was the map, they couldn't fit all of it in, and he was like, I got you, and he got in there and he
just debugged it,
which is nice to know that the games have the next honorable mention. The games have sold extremely well.
Oh yeah, they sold well. This is not just saying the games have sold extremely well. Games. We're talking about over the span of the Pokemon video game lifetime, they have sold over 3 million Pokemon copies.
Wait, 3 million?
Over 3 million.
3 million. 300.
No, I'm sorry, 300. I'm sorry. Right, you're right. Oh. My number's up.
I'm pretty sure they just did that yesterday.
Let's combine it together. 300 million.
Yeah.
That's how much they sold. And that's not including the digital copies or the free-to-play copies like Pokemon Go and stuff like that. But honestly, for myself, even though I am glad to hear that Pokemon is selling so much, I'm at the same time kind of tired of Pokemon selling so well.
It's a portable game that you buy a 3DS, you buy a Pokemon game. It's kind of like you buy a PS4 and you buy Grand Theft Auto.
No, but my problem with Pokemon is the fact that I watched Pokemon when it first came out, and I liked Pokemon when it was red and blue, and they had 150 Pokemon, maybe 155 Pokemon. It was manageable. But then they hit this ridiculous number the moment they went to Imaginary Islands.
The Pokemon thing is going to be fine. What is not fine is, I know you told me this is an old video, but I did see Elon Musk, so if you guys want to find the video, Elon Musk shared a video of this robot jumping through different boxes, man. Like, this is how the world ends. Look at this guy.
A human-sized robot.
So if you guys want to find this video that we saw, it's a human-sized robot. He's over here jumping over boxes. Jumped over 3 boxes. Just jumped it autonomously. Then he got to one that was a little high up, right? A little higher than the rest. He still managed to get up there. And he backflips towards the very end of the video. That's how the world ends. That's how Skynet ends.
That robot did have to do the backflip a couple of times because it landed wrong and it just bounced forward onto its belly.
It's all
but
right.
It's all right.
It knew how to twist around. It knew how to manage, whatever it is. He was able to gauge.
And it had the ability to stand upright and really move so well.
Because about a year ago, I was watching some of these robot videos and they were stumbling around everywhere. Now they're jumping over boxes and backflipping for a little flair at the very end.
Oh, did you know that there's actually an AI robot that actually became the first robotic citizen?
I'm very upset by this. Thanks for joining us for this Tuesday edition of Salient Points. I'm Carlos Macias. You can find me on Twitter at @AduceClean. Dalan?
I'm Dalan Kirkwood. You can find me on Twitter at _Zesha_. Double underscore spelled XEXIA. If you want to check out that robot video, we're going to put a link below the video if you want to check that out.
It's a lot of work.
It's not that lot of work.
Go to Dalan's Twitter and he'll link it on there.
Fine.
Feel free.
Thanks for removing it.
I'm gonna be somebody tonight. I'm gonna be somebody tonight.